on this cold and chilly morning. And this is a very powerful story we're about. It's a sensitive story. So we're going to be very sensitive in handling it, because that's what we attempt to do around here. And yeah, here they are. Good morning.
Good morning, Sonia. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Everybody on your screen is Mike and Sasha Wall. Well, they're both DJs, actually. Mike is a radio presenter as well, known as Waxworks. They jointly own a radio station, iStream. And this is an incredibly sensitive story, and I hope that we can give it some justice, actually, by the time that we've finished talking. Because first of all, Mike, I am so sorry for the loss of your brother, Tim, and whom we're going to be talking about. And I know this is very painful for you, but there are many reasons why you feel the need to speak out right now, not least because you need legal help and you also need psychological help, but we'll get onto that shortly. So, and also you will be able to find out more about Mike and Tim, because Mike has his own podcast coming out in January. So let's first of all start. Obviously, your husband and wife, very supportive of each other. Lovely to see you both. And we need more of that, don't we? We need people coming together and strengthening each other. And Mike, it struck me that your story really, obviously, starts from a very vulnerable childhood, but where it all kind of crystallized and peaked to a certain degree was when your brother was found dead in Shoreham on the beach. And that's when all things started to kick off and make a huge amount of sense for you. What can you tell us about that?
It really was a massive wake-up call for me. In the months leading up into that, my brother had become very unwell, and my mother started acting a bit strange. I couldn't work out why she wasn't seeing how unwell he was, and she didn't seem to be concerned about her safety as well as his safety. So obviously all my concerns were all around that. But the day that the police knocked on my door, the day that my brother sadly was found on Shoreham Beach to have been drowned in the middle of the day, stone cold sober according to the post-mortem report, nobody saw him go into the water. And there was two conflicting witness statements on the day of what happened. But the police came to our house around 3 o'clock in the afternoon to inform us. And they said that I was the first next of kin to have been informed, even though my mother lived 5 minutes away from where he was found, and I lived 45 minutes away from where he was found.
Weird.
And I only found out recently from being given something that's called the pronto sudden death form, which is a very important thing. If anybody loses anybody suddenly, you should know about this form and ask the police to provide it to you, because it has a lot of key information on it. And they'd actually identified my brother on the beach that day using his driving license, which had his mother's address on it where he was living at the time. So why they didn't go there first, they still haven't fully explained to me.
Very weird.
It is a really, really key point as to the fact of they have his driving license. It says the address. The actual address was a stone's throw. Literally, what?
It's a 20-minute walk.
20-minute walk and a stone's throw away.
3 minutes ride in the car.
But they didn't go to that address.
And it will become evident to people as we talk why these things like this are key. And one of the things is you don't believe for a second that Tim took his own life.
I 100% believe that he did not, yes. And that's not only based on everything that he was saying in the run-up to the day that it happened. In all of his mental health notes, they were checking in with him with these things, and he was saying he would never do that to his family. To other suspicious circumstances around other family members not wanting to disclose any information to me. From the day he died, everybody wouldn't talk to me. They announced on Facebook that he'd taken his own life just 4 hours after he was found on the beach that day, before any investigation had been commenced. And up until this point, I'd been stopped from seeing my mother for 4 months, told by her that I couldn't come to the house because I was my older brother's trigger and I would set him off, and that he was angry at me and my wife. But I was still in telephone contact with her. But the day that we went over there to tell her with the police, she sent me away, and then she never spoke to me again. She prevented me going to his funeral, prevented me coming back to the house to have a photo or anything. So
And I think this is
that's when it really dawned, when you were saying, when everything clicked in on me, oh, hang on a minute, why am I being treated like this?
Now, obviously, your mum's not here, so she can't defend herself. So we just have to be careful in that regard. But I completely get it. You know, families are complicated, and especially when there's a death in the family, right? But this is a long-standing story here. We're talking about the fact that, and I have to be very careful because there's a number of legal situations at the moment that Mike and Sasha are involved with. But we are talking about, you know, as a child, you were left vulnerable, right? You've been basically, you feel you've been failed by everybody. Some of the background in your childhood home was an extraordinarily busy home. There were at least like 20 foster brothers, 3 foster sisters, unaccompanied asylum seekers,
and no boundaries,
and no boundaries. And both you and Tim, and we can't go into a great deal about this, but were abused. Now, there is an absolute failure in the inquest of Tim for this not even to be an issue. Tell us about that.
Yeah, none of the background was taken into account at all. With regards to the police investigation initially, when they first made contact with me, just a couple of months after he was found, a couple of months for them to actually get him back in contact with me. You know, they've turned up on my door, told me that he's passed. I've taken him to my other family members' home. They go in, tell them, and then I get sent away. And then the police don't give me any more contact. We phone up and we're told to make a complaint.
It's a key point as to the fact of this was the most traumatic day, obviously, and going back to that. And obviously Mike's concern for all family members at this point was a great alert. So to then get to the family member, get to Tim's home, and to then have to sit outside, wait and see what was happening while it's getting darker and darker, then being told that we would be contacted to go home and that we would be contacted, and the police never contacted us. 4 days later, he's in massive distress, and so I contacted the police and I was told to make a complaint. And so I made a complaint. And 2 weeks later, that complaint, they called and said, oh, what would you like us to do? They said, there's no investigation happening. And obviously Mike is in complete, utter trauma, shock, nightmare, like, because there'd been a 6-month run up to this. And it is a key point that I would just like to address, is to the fact that this went off in lockdown. So it wasn't as simple as something went off on the day he died. Tim rang 999 on the 4th of May 2020 in lockdown. And this is, you know, 1 month into lockdown. And he rang 999 in rage. And all I can describe it, and this is the truth fact, and it's out there, he was frothing at the mouth. And he was swinging a chest of drawers around his head, and he was angry. And all I can describe this is as a man who had so much, because he's a man like him, who's gentle, loving, caring, out there caring in the community, always looking after his family, always doing those things. But this was a guy that had been in therapy for 2 years and the lid had come off.
Yes. Well, that happens when people suddenly get sometimes that realization of what has happened to you and how you've been neglected and badly let down. It can hit people all at once and overwhelm them. That happens.
Exactly.
But there's such a negligence in this whole story in terms of all the services have failed you, failed Tim, you know, NHS, the police.
We were all asking for help the whole time. Help.
Yeah, it is as simple as this in this situation. You have to understand when the services are called, there's who's calling the alarm, who's caring, who's loving, and who's
worried,
red
concerned.
flag.
Right.
And it's as simple as that as what happened. Tim gave Mike full consent, as he would naturally, because this is two brothers that are like this all their lives. They travel around the world. They're literally two brothers that have never argued in their life, which is rare, I know.
We lost our father in 94, and he's 10 years my senior. The other siblings are even older than us. But he's the closest, so he became my father figure.
And so
Got it.
So Tim naturally gave Mike full consent to help him with his mental health, and had been in a caring role for 10 years at the age of 52. Now, when he's trying to address the mental health of his mother, and that's getting very old as well, and he's in that situation and the lid comes off,
they're
he's
isolated.
got full consent to Mike, but Mike is then prevented from talking to him ever again. The GP, when he went into psychiatric hospital for a month, and that is Meadowfield Hospital in Worthing. I've spoken to many people that have been into this hospital, and it is failing families left, right, and centre.
I'm hearing this all across the UK in terms of mental health services, an absolute catastrophic failure.
Oh, catastrophic. You know, it was very, very clear from his therapy notes and his GP notes that we got during the inquest process, but that was January this year, so we had to wait 2 years to get this information.
Wow.
But all these medical people had this information when he went in, and it was all within his notes that he was talking about historic abuse, and he even said himself
sexual abuse that day.
He disclosed it to the police, he disclosed it to his GP, he said he thought he had PTSD.
And just to make this clear, when he disclosed it, and this is in the medical record, when he disclosed it to his GP, which is Manor Practice in Southwick, they are the family doctor and have been for 25 years. He disclosed it to the doctor, and the doctor said it sounded consensual at 10 years old.
Is this on notes or anything?
Yes. Yeah. It says he disclosed historic abuse at the age of 10 years old, but it sounded consensual.
And Tim has also put in his notes that this really upset him, because
it made him react to
no 10-year-old can consent. Literally no 10-year-old can consent.
Exactly, Sonia. Exactly.
That's ridiculous.
And this is a man who's worked as well. You know, we've grown up in the foster care environment. We've had young people disclose sexual abuse to both of us growing up in part of our job in the foster care environment. We both worked in residential children's homes and as mentors. So we know what people are supposed to say.
Absolutely.
That's completely not the thing to say.
Absolutely not. And I will send them a copy of this video, and I want a response to that, because that is absolutely
on you, and they
horrendous.
Keep shutting us down. They keep shutting us down.
Manor Practice Southwick, I do want to call out, they have refused to talk to the brother since this. We are talking now 2.5 years of a family doctor that was refusing to even discuss the notes that his own medical records, let alone the ones that we've actually got of his brothers. It is absolutely appalling. There is something in Sussex called, if you have any mental health problems in Sussex, the GP just does this. Go to Time to Talk, and it's called Time to Talk, right? Ironically. And they send you a link and they send you off. Now, Tim was in Time to Talk for 2 years.
In total.
Now, the GP won't talk. How can the GP send you to Time to Talk when they won't talk?
That's absolutely ridiculous. But I want to say something to you, and that is obviously we've got to be very careful because we don't want to defame anybody. But what you're painting to us is Tim was obviously very distressed, in a great deal of distress. So why would you not think that he would take his own life? What, again, be careful, but for what reason?
He had a lot to live for. He was talking to friends about wanting to go back to work, wanting to travel again.
He was just about cashing his pension.
He changed his GP about a month before he passed, and at the new GP he'd registered to sign off for medical retirement, and they were putting it all through. So he was just about to cash in his pension, West Sussex County pension, and retire on it. And he was, Yeah,
we know, right? We know that everything, we know the truth. Mike knows the truth for his brother, knows everything about it. So he knows that everything that was in the inquest bundle that has been given is not true.
Not the truth.
So not
the inquest is a real issue. Now, I mean, for people who don't know, a coroner is one of the highest judges in the land, right? They can overrule practically everything. And I speak as a journalist who have attempted to get records previously, and they've said, no, you're not having them. And it's as simple as that, where everything's supposed to be open and transparent. There was an issue for you with the witness statements. You weren't even allowed to have questions asked of the witnesses, right?
No, not even allowed to ask questions of the witnesses.
They didn't even come to the inquest.
They weren't called. They weren't called as witnesses. I asked again and again and again. They ignored my emails. Then when they changed coroner within the process over the 2 years, and the second coroner, within one of our first correspondences with me, said, well, you've left it really late to ask for these kind of things. I asked for these things early on and they just ignored me. I have the email correspondence,
What was actually happening with the inquest? I mean, unfortunately, in this world that we're living in, there are so many sudden deaths, so many inquests that are going on, that you are dealing with people that are so busy that they just want to shut the book as quickly as they can, tick the box, go, that person's suicidal, oh, they've been in a mental health therapy, let's just tick the box.
Unconscious bias.
So it's complete assumption. So a complete assumption was made. But that assumption was only made because he'd been into Meadowfield.
Right.
Now, we know that he was not suicidal and not in that way, because it's very, very clear when people do cries for help or are in therapy, or when they're actually suicidal. And Timothy was just assessed as low risk, completely low risk.
Was talking to everybody about his problems, his family members, his mental health support, young people that he worked with.
But what can I ask, again, without us naming anybody, but for what reason would somebody potentially want to see Tim dead?
So there's two major reasons. One is to cover up the historic abuse because it's family abuse. They didn't want that to come out. And number two, financial.
Okay, that's interesting. And what I noticed, by the way, was I watched the videos that you sent me, Sasha, which was at the funeral. And as someone, I've lost my brother and sister over the last 2 years, devastating, absolutely devastating. And to not actually makes me want to cry for you, to be honest with you, to be barred from entering the funeral of your own brother is, to me, one of the most egregious things to happen regarding this in some respects. Talk to me about that, Mike.
That was the only telephone call made by the family to me after my brother passed. It was me trying to phone them and ask them for information, and the phone call was made and I was told that I wasn't going to be permitted to attend on the next of kin's wishes, that I could go to the chapel and spend time with the coffin if I wished, and that was it. That was their stance. I found out who the funeral directors was and got in contact, and very diplomatically just sent over a list of names that I believed these were the people that he would really want to be there for him. I know him better than anyone in the world,
including foster brothers,
foster brothers, young people that he'd looked after, asylum seekers that looked at him as a surrogate father, people that had attended an online memorial that I actually did after the funeral. But to turn up and to be peaceful and want to attend and to be just told you're not allowed in was devastating. I had some friends with me. Another one of my foster brothers wasn't let in as well, and we wanted to stand outside and just greet the mourners at least. I said, look, I'll greet the mourners and then we'll go, because I'm not going to cause a scene at my brother's funeral. And
it was just awful.
And there's a video of it, and what we know now is that a family member rang the police and said that we were being violent.
So there was a fight kicking off.
Didn't say that I was the brother trying to attend my brother's funeral. Rang Sussex police and said there's people trying to get into my brother's funeral and they're being violent.
This is shocking. I've seen the video. I've listened very carefully. You don't sound at all violent. You're having a conversation when the cops turn up. And I should say to people, there's a really bigger story here that we can't necessarily go into, but we will, because hopefully Mike and Sasha will come back as this progresses. But we are talking about being on the South Coast, potential child trafficking taking place, a
Yeah.
cover-up involving services.
Yeah.
So that's the much bigger picture here that
Mhm.
is impacting these people on the screen, that very likely, sadly, impacted Tim. And they need some
And
justice.
the wider community.
And the wider community, because you were very
ripple effect.
right, because you were very well known in the community, both of you, right?
Both of us were well known. My brother was very well loved. You know, we were known as Timmy and Mikey around town. We went out and socialised and grew up on Shoreham Beach. Whereas the other older people in the family had moved away and not been really around for the last 20, 30 years.
Right.
And because a lot of the people that knew Tim really well, they said, no, he wouldn't do this. He wouldn't do this. But it's all been put out that that's what's happened. So they're just totally confused. You know, these young people looked at me and Tim as this close bond and these loving brothers that took them under their wing when they came into this country and showed them how to be upright and stand up for themselves and they could achieve. And then he did this. They're left in confusion.
Right.
It's about being isolation and being left in the dark, and
people not wanting to talk and tell the truth.
Everything that happens to Tim happens to Mike.
Yeah.
You know, they are soul brothers. They are walking the same path, and that's it. Now, obviously, I'm making sure that he doesn't end up dead.
Well, that's the thing. I was just going to say, Mike, you're not suicidal, are you? Because let's put that on the record right now.
No, 100% I'm not.
Right.
But this is the thing, I am being isolated, financially abused, smear campaigns, scapegoated, all of these things. Victim blaming is all going on to me. And I see more through my brother's eyes than I ever have in my life now. He's gone, bless him. And I see everything that was happening to him. I feel it. They're doing the same thing to me now.
It's been horrific. It is the most horrific thing, and I really truly.
But we have a support network.
We are really lucky because we have an outside family. You know, we work in the music community. That's always been our community. We have a lot of friends. We have a lot of support.
Thank goodness.
And that is, quite frankly, the only thing that has kept us going.
It's brought me closer to some of the my dad's side of the family, who I haven't seen since he passed away in '94.
Yeah.
One thing I just would like to highlight is this: Sussex police are bad. They are useless.
The way they've treated us is horrendous.
And I literally, I have never had to deal with the police before in my life. I have now dealt with half of Sussex Police Force, right up to Silver Commander. I would like to also give a mention to Andrew Griffith and Tim Loughton MPs,
who've treated us with a lot of respect and compassion.
Who have been the only people that have helped us.
Good to hear.
The only reason that an investigation of any kind did take place. Yeah. And they have been really, really supportive.
The police investigation doesn't add up anyway. It was things like tide was incoming when it was outgoing.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, if they take the statements that they've been given by people as to what time my brother left the house and how long it takes to get to the beach, and for him to be drowned within that time is just physically impossible. Right. Also, me and my brother grew up on that beach. We're surfers. We know how hard it is to do that to yourself. Right. He'd been wearing the clothes that he was wearing if he was trying to drown himself, because it kept him afloat. The first witness said he was floating on his back, eyes open. He looked like he was alive. She turned to take her children to the car, turned back round. It looked like he was swimming for shore. She took her children to the car, came back. The second witness that she said she saw at the top of the beach during this whole time just seemed to be watching. She said that he was then stood over the body and the body was lifeless on the beach by the time she came back. The two stories conflicted completely. He said that he was a windsurfer, that he turned up that day and thought he saw someone swimming in the water at 1:30 in the afternoon on the 30th of October. It's a very cold day. Yeah. And in the distance, you'd be able to see that he was fully clothed. That he says that his statement says that he was already dead when he found him in the water. So there was conflicting information that the police wouldn't even entertain. They didn't question any of it.
Over the last 2 years, there has been an awful lot of, oh, you just don't want to believe it's suicide, or but it's your fault and you can't cope with the guilt. That is the biggest load of bullshit I've ever heard. Right? Every step of the way, all the way through, we have been looking constantly. Show us how it's possible. Show us how it could have been done like that. Make it out to you. Don't tell us he walked over a bridge that wasn't there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's astonishing negligence, actually. But there's also another issue here which greatly concerns me, and that is when males disclose abuse, there is still a failure to take them seriously or to deal with them appropriately.
Yeah,
it's horrific.
Horrendous and horrific. You know, my brother had disclosed to his GP, to the police. Then he's been put into a hospital. They've completely dismissed that disclosure in hospital and that information within his diagnosis. He's then released back into the community with no support. The police don't go back and help him and speak to him again.
And they don't realise that the environment, and I think this is something that all mental health people need to understand. It is not the patient, just the patient's problem. The environmental factors, the environment that they're living in or they're going back to, and why they're in that position in the first place. Because there's so many people that are in domestic abuse situations that are ending up, because they're the ones that are going, help, I need help, not the ones that are abusing.
Yeah.
And so those that are going for help, and they're getting they're
into the system.
They're being put into the system, and then they're the ones with the problem. And the environment people, so i.e. nobody wants to talk about sexual abuse. So everybody's like, shut down, shut down, shut down. People shut down.
It shouldn't be shut down at an inquest where the coroner then rules suicide. That should not be shut down. It should absolutely be included. This is an extraordinary story that these
the coroner's words
are caught in. Yeah, go on.
The coroner's words at the inquest at the end, when I said, can you please at least acknowledge my statement and take it into consideration? At the end, she said, I'll read it at the end, and if there's anything relative, I'll include it. And
how dismissive.
She came in at the very end and went, oh, I forgot to check your statement, Mr. Wall. I'll just go through it and check it now. And she skimmed over it, Bridget Dolan QC, skimmed over it. And she said, well, Michael, at the end of the day, you've said, and it's proven that you had no contact with your brother for 4 months up until he passed away. You hadn't seen him. So nothing that you say is relevant.
I was refused to be an interested person. They said, oh, they have actually got it in writing. I am irrelevant.
I'm so sorry to hear this, and I'm so sorry that we have to let you go, but I want to just put out an appeal. If anybody is listening to this who can offer these people legal assistance, okay, any lawyers out there, any psychologists, because they also need that help as well, feel free to contact me. Where could they also contact you?
Mike at istreamradio.com. I'm Sasha at istreamradio.com with a C, and we are at istreamradio.com with double A, and everybody that knows us knows that they can contact us there. And we would like to say that this is the most key thing in our community. We've seen everyone be isolated since lockdown. Lockdown might be over, but everyone's still isolated. Everybody's shut down. People aren't talking, much worse than they ever were before. Everybody's struggling. Nobody's talking. Nobody's getting help. Everything gets worse.
Yeah.
We want our community back together.
Yes.
On every level. And he hasn't seen other foster brothers. He's been isolated from other family, other friends, because of smear campaigns. It has to stop. Tim and Michael Wall are the good guys, not the bad guys.
Right, Mike, you are the scapegoat. That's what's happened.
Yeah.
This always happens.
Something honestly. I had no comprehension really of before all this happened.
Yeah.
So a very fast track crash course.
Will you come back as the story updates? Because it's really important. Please, lovely people, get behind this couple. It's horrendous what they've been through. As I say, there's so much that we've had to not be able to go into detail about just because ongoing legal situations, and these people need justice. Please help them get it.
We want help, and anybody anybody that can offer anything, we're totally open. We've always
absolutely
help. Yeah, exactly. I'm at Waxworks Music on Twitter. Actually, that's all social media. So that's WAXWORX Music. There's also links to some blogs that I've done that have got more details on the story and things like that if people want to get a bit more understanding. So.
Excellent. Not at all. And thank you, Emma Jane Taylor, for connecting us as well. Really important.
Massive thank you to Emma Jane Taylor. What an amazing woman she is.
She truly is.
We as are you, Sonia.
Oh, bless you. Well, as are you both as well. Take good care of yourself. Come back and join us. And please do take care of each other so much.
We do. We've always stood side by side.
Wonderful. Everybody, Mike and Sasha Wall. Take care of yourselves. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye. Please help them. These, whoever's out there who can help, please come forward. These people need your help. They really do. It's awful what's happened. It's wrong. It's wrong. It's just wrong. This is a story with very serious, wider implications.